As fun as it was, spooky season is over. And what better way to end off the month than by binging a bunch of horror movies with your homies? But Cam, I don't know any horror movies. Don't worry about that, fam. I got you covered. Here are great... Sorry. Here are 5 great films to watch during Halloween. Now, this isn't a list of my personal favorites, nor would I go as far as to say that these are the best horror movies ever. But I think that there's something special about all of them, and everybody should be able to watch them and enjoy them. So, let's get into it. Horror is funny. No, seriously, horror can be funny. The first movie on our list is of the horror comedy genre. These movies include Scary Movie, Cabin in the Woods, Zombieland, and American Psycho. But a horror comedy that I think everyone would enjoy is Edgar Wright's 2004 zombie cult classic, Shaun of the Dead.
Take car, go to Mum's, kill Phil, grab Liz, go to the Winchester, have a nice cold pint, and wait for all this to blow over.
The first of the Cornetto trilogy, this movie is incredibly fun to watch. The dialogue is witty, and the characters are entertaining. As someone who didn't really grow up watching a lot of horror films, I think that everyone can sit down and enjoy this one. Horror comedy is just a subgenre in horror, and there are many others. You got your slashers like Screamin' Halloween, your sci-fi horrors like Aliens and Event Horizon, and films that aren't classified as horror, but should be. I'm looking at you, Watership Down. The movie I've chosen comes from the splatter film genre. This subgenre is known for its gore and brutal death scenes. Before he gifted us with other great horror movies like Insidious and The Conjuring and Aquaman, our boy James Wan was just out of film school and he wanted to make a name for himself. He teamed up with his friend Lee Whannell, who also directed the Invisible Man movie that came out earlier this year, which is also great, so you should go watch it. And the two came up with a little movie that made a big impact in the horror scene. That little movie is called Saw.
Hello, Amanda. You don't know me, but I know you. I want to play a game.
With a 9th installment coming out in 2021 that has Chris Rock producing it, I went back to watch the original, and man, I loved it. I don't know if a lot of people will agree with me, but it feels a lot like a thriller. It reminds me a lot of Seven, well, if we had the perspective of John Doe and his victims instead. It's a cool film, and I think it still holds up today, so you should go watch it. But don't eat food while you're doing it, because some of these traps are gruesome to say the least. When it comes to horror, there are many directors in the industry who are great at getting out their vision. The 2 sets of movies I have next are from 2 brilliant new directors who have made a name for themselves within the genre, and I think a lot of horror fans have already figured out who I'm talking about. If you still don't know, here's a hint. A24. If you still don't know, I'm talking about Robert Eggers and Ari Aster. So far, they both released 2 movies each, with Eggers being The Witch and The Lighthouse. I love the amount of details that he has in these films. They're all based around folklore yet still feel fresh and new, and the clothes and dialects are all period accurate.
Say it! I don't have to say nothing.
Danny! Let Neptune strike ye dead, Winslow!
Then we have Ari Aster, whose movies take place in the present day. His last film, Midsummer, is easily the creepiest movie I've seen in a long time, which is crazy because most of the story takes place during the broad daylight. There was a scene that literally made me turn my head multiple times, and I know everyone that's seen this movie probably knows which one I'm talking about. The cinematography is also gorgeous. Hereditary was a 2018 film, and that was something. First off, everyone's acting in that movie is on point. Toni Collette, Gabriel Byrne, Millie Shapiro, and Alex Wolff, all amazing. This movie is horrifying. I watched it the first time at like 1 a.m. one night when I was home alone. Bro, if you haven't seen it, then you really should. I decided to put Ari Aster's and Robert Eggers' films in one spot, which means I can give you guys an extra film. The one I chose is It Follows. Now, this movie has a very strange premise. The protagonist is followed by a supernatural entity after she got it given to her. How did she get it, you might ask? But hear me out though. This movie is fantastic. There's a lot of things about it as in the movie, that I really like. The monster is basically a shapeshifter that can take the form of literally any person. In this form, whoever has it will be followed until he or she can pass it on to someone else. And it never runs, it's always slowly walking behind the characters. And you think that it wouldn't be scary, but it's actually really effective. There's a lot of scenes in this film where the characters are just chilling or walking or somewhere, and you see something behind them. Thing is, sometimes it's it, sometimes it's not. And you're never really sure where it is, and it's really unsettling. Also, the movie it has a super cool retro aesthetic, and the score is fire. Finally, I'm at the last spot of the list. I've shown you a lot of movies on this side of the world, but what about the other? The last movie that I think that you should watch is a movie from Sweden called Let the Right One In. This movie is a horror romance between a vampire child and a 12-year-old boy.
Hur gammal är du?
12. Ungefär. Du då?
12 år, 8 månader och 9 dagar. Vadå 12 ungefär?
Out of all the movies on this list, I think that this is the most quietest. The movie has an interesting take on what vampires are and what they can and can't do. And it makes all the vampires feel a lot more like actual humans. I also really like the relationship between Oscar, our human, and Ellie, the vampire, because even though it's a romance, the two interact like actual friends would before anything else. There's also a scene that has to do with a pool, and that is absolutely gorgeous. And that's the list. What do you think of it? Have you seen any of these movies? Did you like them? Did you hate them? What horror movies do you think everyone should see at least once? Leave them in the comments. I'm Cam, and I'll see you again.